What's up guys, I'm Phoenix Master 1 and welcome to my refined review and builds guide for Altina, Winter Altina and Legendary Leif. So Altina did get a remix as well and she has finally got a refine, and even though this is a distant counter dual phase brave weapon, her refine is honestly pretty good. So overall, this weapon refine does help her do the Vantage strategy a lot better, as it does provide her with +5 attack and resistance in the combat, and it also provides her with special cooldown charge +1 per attack in both phases. So this means that on both enemies hits and her own attack, she's able to pretty much get these special charges, which means that she can easily trigger twin blades. And then finally, this weapon refine does give her the dull attack defense on the foe, which pretty much means that it neutralizes any kind of visible buffs of the opponent in their attack and defense. So this can allow her to pretty much Vantage sweep a lot better and also hit harder, while also being able to function as a flying tank a bit easily. And speaking of tanking, she does have Ashera's Chosen Plus as the remix skill, which still has the Iod Shield built into it, and now she can get +9 attack, defense and resistance in the combat with this skill. She can also do true damage based on 70% of the difference between her resistance and the opponent's resistance, and this can go all the way up to +7, so that is going to be the hard cap. And finally, she has got Dragon Wall built into this skill. So this remix is definitely pretty nutty, and it does go really well with the refine that she has got. And I would say that Altina overall is much better now as a mythic unit, and Winter Altina is already, a pretty solid unit who is going to be having access to the infantry only skills. And as you'll see in a moment, their playstyles do differ a bit, but overall they both are going to be enjoying the weapon refines here. But the Mythic Altina is definitely going to be enjoying the remix skill, which does provide her the damage reduction. So this damage reduction is always really helpful in terms of Vantage sweeping, because if you face any kind of hardy bearing opponent, or even AoE special mage with hardy bearing like Legendary Lilina, then you're going to be able to tank them with the Dragon Wall hopefully, and it does make it a lot easier to survive and just continue with your Vantage strategy. The true damage that you get is also pretty good for Vantage sweeping obviously, and she can also function as a bit of a tank as well if you don't really want to run Vantage in her slot B. So it does add to more flexibility, which is always good. Overall, as a mythic unit, Altina is still a more combat centric unit, but she is going to be able to pull her own weight a lot better now compared to before. There are already many good support Ashera units like Illimine, Thor, Ashera, Naga, so if you are in for a more combat-centric mythic, then Altina is going to be functioning much better now. I'll be going over the builds of both of these units because they do have access to different skills, but let's take a look at Mythic Altina first. For a budget build, there's really not much you have to do. She does come with attack defense hold as her remix skill, so make sure to learn that along with Ashera's Chosen Plus, and she also is going to be using Twin Blades really easily with these special charges that she's able to get. So you can just run reposition on her and she can function as a pretty good Vantage unit, and she's going to be much better now as a flying sword unit. You can also use her in Aether Raids offense as a Vantage unit by using Ardent Sacrifice. So this is pretty much the most consistent way of getting into the Vantage range. You could even use Ymir actually and use her Miracle to pretty much fall into the Vantage range, but in my opinion using Winter Bernadetta or Brave Lysithea is a lot better way. And you can also use a support unit like Duo Thor or Hubert, who can just inflict the exposure status on the opponent, and that is going to be allowing you to have more true damage with your brave hits, and just you're going to be able to take out much more units. And she is going to be a pretty nice Vantage unit in the Chaos season, where Vantaging is a lot easier as the opponents don't really get any kind of mythic buffs. But even in the Astro season, when she is going to be a bonus mythic, she is going to be a pretty solid Vantage sweeper as well, as she'll be getting some extra bulk. And I'm definitely going to be trying her out even outside of her bonus season just as a Vantage unit, because I don't think a lot of teams really prepare for Vantage strategies, at least in like the Astro season where most people do use the safe tanks. So I think she's going to be pretty nice there as a different strategy. She can also be used as a max investment tank. So like I was saying, she is still going to be functioning as a Vantage unit, but now she has the flexibility of functioning as a tank thanks to the damage reduction that she's able to get, and also extra resistance and defense that she's able to get. So you can just run Mystic Boost 4 so that you can get the healing and also the attack buff on the opponent. And you're also going to be able to retaliate back to the Dazzling Staff opponents. So that is pretty good. So I'll only recommend this if you're going to be having her at max merges, and then she's going to be able to function with a bit different playstyle. She could also be used in Aether Raids offense as a Gale Force unit, and I have been using her in Gale Force teams ever since we got her for free. So the reason why she can function as a good Gale Force unit is because of the special charges that she can get. So getting Heavy Blades checks with Altina used to be really hard. And now it's a lot easier. So basically she's going to be a Wings of Mercy Gale Force unit. She's not really going to be functioning as an initiator, but if you use Thor Force already or use Thor as your initiator, then she could have already gotten the Warbreaker support, and you know, this kind of refine doesn't really add anything to the Gale Force strategies. So personally for me, it doesn't really change anything because I use Thor as my initiator. But if you're going to be using a different initiator who doesn't have the Warbreaker, then the special charges are definitely going to be helpful. You can run Quicken Pulse so that she can have a 4-turn Gale Force, and then she can trigger Gale Force with her Brave hits, which is going to be extremely fun. And then finally, she could also be used in Arena or in Mjolnir Strike as a high scoring unit if you do have her at Plus and Merge. And I use high scoring very lightly because she is not really all that high scoring. She only scores like 175 BST unit with a 300 SP slot B skill. So yeah, not all that high scoring, but if you're going to be using her for Arena or Mjolnir Strike, then Seal Defense 4 is a pretty good option here because you are going to be able to get the defense debuff on the foe and stack that up with attack defense hold. So that is definitely going to be pretty nice. And I haven't really mentioned one option here, which is attack resistance Oath 4. So if you're going to be mainly running her with like beast units and dragon units, then I think having the Oath 4 skill is going to be pretty good for her so that she can get extra resistance and also get the visible buffs consistently, and the teleportation out of the Oath 4 skill is going to be pretty useful. Now let's move on to Winter Altina and how she can use Ragnall Alondite Weapon Refine. So on a budget, you can just give her reposition, and attack res ideal is going to be working out fine. You can even run attack res farm. Any of those sacred seals that can boost up your attack and resistance are going to be pretty good. And for Winter Altina, this Weapon Refine pretty much frees her up from running a Bread Sacred Seal, so she can just get more stats with a Ideal Sacred Seal or Form Sacred Seal, which is definitely pretty amazing. And she doesn't even need to be run with someone like Brave Lucina, for example. If you want to use her in Aether Raids offense, then I think that she can work as an Omni tank now after her Weapon Refine. She doesn't really get any kind of damage reduction like the Mythic Altina, but still with her sheer stats and the sheer bulk that she's got, she can try and function as an Omni tank against maybe like a Cav line. And there the Bulwark skill is definitely going to be pretty useful to make sure that your units do not really get sniped. And you need to make sure that you use the support units which are not affected by Embla's feud. So giving her support of someone like Flane is really not going to be working with the feud status that they can inflict on you. So definitely try and use someone like Eliwood, for example, Legendary Eliwood, who can give you the bonus doubler. And in my opinion, attack res Unity in Aether Raids offense is going to be the go-to skill because Yune is quite everywhere and her debuffs are going to be pretty annoying. So as one of the Ashera's warriors, you should always be ready to face Yunes. You can also run her with attack resistance finish 4 and also the Bulwark skill, so the healing that you're going to be getting out of this is going to be amazing. And the finish skill is perfect slotty skill for her because she does have the special charges on her weapon, and she also has a solid special in Twin Blades which can pierce through the damage reduction. So this is a really good special and a really good combo to run this kind of build on. And attack res Oath 4 is going to be the ultimate slotsy skill that you can run because it does give you the teleportation, the extra resistance, which does help you with Twin Blades, and also the extra attack. And then you can also use her in Summoner Duels as a frontliner, in my opinion now. And she's going to be able to take out units like Brave Seliph now as a frontliner because she's going to be triggering her Twin Blades right on the retaliation, and then her Brave hit is going to be finishing off Brave Seliph. So that is pretty helpful for surviving and working as a frontliner there. And you can also run Sturdy Stance so that you can get the guard effect, which is definitely going to be helpful in enemy facing and functioning as a frontliner. But a finish skill is also going to be pretty good for the true damage that you can try and get. She can also be run as a Gale Force unit like I explained before for Mythic Altina section, but here she could be run in the light season with Asker. So you can easily get 4 cooldown Gale Force with Asker and also run Infantry Pulse to pulse down Asker and like, you know, Ash for example, and that is going to be really helpful. So she can function there as a Gale Force unit, and attack res Unity is always good again because Yune is pretty annoying and you don't really have Thor's Warbreaker in the light season either. So I think she functions a bit better as a Gale Force unit than Mythic Altina in my opinion because of the choice that you can have to run her in the light season. And having a Brave effect is really good on a Gale Force team. And then finally, if you want to use her in Arena, then she could be used here. And she actually does score higher than the Mythic Altina because she is an infantry unit. and pretty much try and emulate the damage reduction which Mythic Altina gets. So the damage reduction is not really as much, but still it's pretty good that you can get out of Quick Repose 4. You can even run Seal Defense 4 actually, but I just wanted to go over this option as it is definitely viable with the finish skill, and Oath 4 skill is always going to be really helpful. Legendary Leif gets his weapon refine and also remix, and his remix was kind of underwhelming honestly because all it does is give him the quick impulse effect, but I think that the refine is much better and definitely carries his new stuff. So Legendary Leif does have the dual phase brave weapon which does give him -5 speed, and he can only get the follow-up negation when he's not being controlled by the AI and he's in the hands of a player. So they haven't really done any kind of effects like these before, so he's kind of unique with that. And he also gets +4 to all of his stats in the combat, and he can do true damage based on 10% of foe's attack. So the modern foe that we face right now does have 60 to like 90 attack, so you can pretty much get like 6 to 9 true damage per hit, which is definitely pretty good with his brave weapon. And then finally he can get the half tempo effect, which is also null guard, so he doesn't really care about the guard effects and can now trigger Neuron Zeal a lot consistently. So the quick impulse is actually pretty nice that he has got, and I would say that his weapon refine and his remix is not really anything insane. He could have of course gotten a lot more things because he is still going to be getting walled by many of the tanky far safe tanks. But still, what he gets for his niche is pretty good, and now he can function much better as a range Gale Force unit with that Neuron Zeal, and he's pretty unique with that. We don't really have many, you know, this kind of range Gale Force units. So the half tempo effect is amazing, and so is the true damage. So not really too insane, but still gets the job done pretty much is what I'll say. And as someone who uses him a lot, I'm kind of satisfied with this kind of refine. Of course, you could have gotten so much. I mean, you can say that about any kind of refine, but this is still pretty decent overall. So if you want to build him up on a budget, you can just give him reposition, and Joint Drive attack is actually the remix skill that he gets, so you can just try and have that. And now it kind of makes sense why they didn't really give him the attack defense menace or attack smoke 4 as the remix skill, because his true damage does depend on the enemy's attack stat, so it doesn't make sense when you're trying to debuff it. So Joint Drive attack is definitely something you should be learning, and then you can also have attack defense catch as the Sacred Seal. But if you want to invest a bit more into him, then you can simply run him with 80 Far Trace. And this is going to be the ideal Leaf build pretty much, because you're going to be able to hit and run much easily, especially when Neuron Zeal can just reduce your movement to 1. He doesn't really have Canto like Cyan Leaf built into his weapon, so this is going to be helpful. And the way his weapon refine actually helps him is that he doesn't really need to depend on like Quick Impulse, Heavy Blade, or Edge Drink to trigger Neuron Zeal consistently, because it is going to be a 2 cooldown special with that Quick Impulse, and then he can easily trigger that. Quick Impulse is going to be mainly there for the first combat. If he had something like Time Pulse, that would have been a lot better honestly. So that's why I say that Heavy Blade is also something that you could consider as a Sacred Seal. And then he can also be used in Aether Raids offense as a Wings of Mercy Gale Force unit, because of course he is a range Gale Force unit, and many times as a Gale Force, you know, enthusiast, I want to have a unit, you know, just teleport on side or behind my initiator. And for that, a range Gale Force unit is always good, and that's the same reason why Brave Marianne is also good. I mean, she can dance, but she's still one of the main reasons why she's good is that she's ranged. So Leif can pretty much do the same thing, and he doesn't really care about the guard effect, so that's pretty amazing for just functioning on a Gale Force team, and definitely is going to be pretty useful. And if you do use him in the light season, then you could use him with Peony and pretty much get the orders buff, so that way even if your movement gets reduced by Neuron Zeal, you can still try and teleport. You could also be running Aether Raids Chaos as a Vantage unit, so by having this kind of dual phase brave weapon, of course we don't really have to stick just to the player phase or mixed phase. We can even go full enemy phase with a Vantage build like this, and you can run him with Winter Bernadetta or Brave Lysithea and just easily get into the Vantage range. And because of having Null Guard, you can pretty much give him a skill like Moonbow, Ruptured Sky, and then pair him up with Fallen Ninian or Na to get the special charges status, and he's going to be able to trigger Moonbow or that 2 cooldown special on his brave attack. So he can function as a Vantage sweeper pretty easily, and this is, you know, rather overlooked role of Leif, I would say, but still he can function and be really fun now after the Null Guard that he can get out of his weapon refine. Not to mention the true damage is also going to be helping you. In Summoner Duels, I think he could be run with Ruptured Sky, and he should be run with someone like Duo Chrom, Asker, or Duo Asker, who can just give you minus some special cooldown, so that Ruptured Sky could be triggered on your Brave hit, and that's, I think, the, better use of him. Deadeye could also be used, but then you'll need a lot more, special cooldown support, and Deadeye is recommended if you run Duo Asker, because then you can use his Duo skill to have Deadeye at 1 cooldown, so only then I would recommend that. And in Summoner Duels, he's easily going to be able to get the follow-up negation because you are going to be controlling him, so you can easily pulse smoke many of the enemies from their pre-charged specials or the Hardy Fighter armors, and that is going to be pretty much one of his main roles, just to nuke. And whenever we have Erosion as the captain skill, he can definitely function pretty well as a hit and run unit because of having the Trace skill and also being able to trigger special on his Brave hit. And finally, you could use him in Arena because he is a water pair-up legendary unit. And he's one of the early ones, so he doesn't really score all that high, and he can run S-Drink if you want to score high with 300 SP passives, so he's going to be able to score like a 180 BSD unit. But in my opinion, now that we have the tier 4 Seal skills, I think Seal Defense 4 is definitely pretty nice that you could run on him, and Panic Smoke 4 is going to be helpful in Arena where people do run rally skills and the visible buffs quite a lot. Make sure to share this video with your friends if they're trying to build up any of these units, and if you enjoyed, leaving a like and commenting does help me a lot. And if you really enjoyed, you could always support me directly by using super thanks down below or by becoming a YouTube member. And for more FEH videos, make sure to subscribe and hit the notification bell because YouTube sub boxes are about as functional as guard skill against Leif now. So with that said, I'll see you guys next time. Thank you so much for watching and have a great day.